Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Maryam Fatima. Today I have brought a special docu-series for you on the channel Pakistan Connect. Today we are going to dive into one of the most pivotal movements in the modern history, the Doha Accords of 2020. The United States and the Taliban put pen to paper on a groundbreaking peace deal that promised to end nearly 2 decades of war in Afghanistan. It was a handshake across divides, a fragile hope for reconciliation amid the chaos of conflict in Qatar's capital, Doha. But as I look back now, with the dust settled and the echoes of those promises still ringing, what really went down? Did it deliver peace, or did it pave the way for turmoil? Let us stick around and let us navigate the Accords' bold ambitions and the lessons that still shape our world today. Dear viewers, let me break down the Doha Agreement, the US-Taliban deal that was signed on February 29, 2020 in Qatar. It's an executive agreement, not a full Senate-ratified treaty. It is a binding document internationally under the customary law, and it is being governed by Pacta Sunt Servanda, which means that agreements must be kept. But domestically in the US, it's more of a policy tool than ironclad law. So there is a need for us to understand that how far deal has been respected. So I think that from the US side, it was pretty solid. They actually withdrew all troops by August 2021. It was a bit ahead of the May deadline after the talks that had been stalled, and there was no major breaches here. And I would say that it was fulfilling the core obligation of exit from Afghanistan. And how can we see it from the Taliban side? I think that it is spotty at best. The Taliban's promised no terrorist safe havens, for example, no Al-Qaeda operations from Afghanistan soil, a prisoner swap, and starting intra-Afghan peace talks. There have been some partial wins, like the violence dipped briefly, and there were some major swaps that happened, but the takeover of Kabul by Taliban government in August 2021, that derailed the talks and raised red flags on the counterterrorism. ISIS-K, it has attacked several times, and those attacks have spiked. It hints at de facto safe havens. So let me discuss the Accord's legality. The Accord is for sure enforceable via diplomacy or UN pressures. But the sanctions, which are more without teeth, I think it is more of a gentleman's agreement than a legal obligation for Taliban. And what are the impacts of the breaches of the Doha Agreement for Pakistan? If I look at it from a geopolitical perspective, circling back to Doha agreements, there have been significant breaches like ignoring safe haven for terrorists. It has had ripple effects in the region, and it has especially affected Pakistan. And as Pakistan is a neighbor to Afghanistan, we have a shared border of 2,600 kilometers. Pakistan has been caught in a fallout, in a ripple effect. And I think that from a legal perspective, if I look at the Taliban talks and the Doha Agreement, post 2021 Taliban takeover of Kabul, I think that there has been a security blowback. Terrorism has surged. The Taliban's de facto tolerance of groups like Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan and Afghanistan centuries, it means that there has been a zero enforcement of Doha's counter-terror clauses. And the attacks on Pakistani soil, they have spiked 50% in 2023 till now in 2025, as per the UN reports. The TTP often claims them as Doha-inspired victories. I think that from another perspective, if I look at it, this entire scenario, it is screaming for attribution under international law. So I think that if we look at it from the Pakistan's perspective, Pakistan argues that Taliban's acquiescence, they fail to act. It makes them liable for cross-border operations. invoking Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter on non-aggression. What is the outcome for this? Pakistan has launched drone strikes into Afghanistan, and it has actually risked the entire region's security. It has led to retaliatory breaches and escalation. Over more than 1,000 Pakistanis, they have died because of the terrorists which are working and operating in Pakistan, and they have bases in Afghanistan since 2021. Despite Pakistan's effort to fence the border, there have been breaches, and the safe havens for the terrorists, they have persisted in their presence and existence across the Durand Line. Furthermore, there is another complication to it. That is the potential for a refugee crisis and a border chaos. Doha stalled in the intra-Afghan talks, fueled instability. It has pushed around 600,000 plus Afghans into Pakistan by 2025. And I am quoting UNHCR statistics for this. And there have been clashes along the Pak-Afghan border, and often Afghan governments, they are disputing this internationally recognized border. The record for these terrorist attacks is very high. So basically, Pakistan government's effort to deport the Afghanistans, this actually has been a sort of critical juncture for Pakistan to balance its commitment to human rights and also the respect for the humanitarian law, meanwhile trying to protect the rights of the Afghan refugees who have been residing in Pakistan. Pakistan has been trading on a very delicate balance all these years in the face of its security complications, which are often connected to safe havens in Afghanistan. If I briefly discuss the mass expulsion of Afghanistan's citizens from Pakistan, there are many critics who call it as a violation of the non-refoulement policy of any state, or the non-refoulement provision violation that has been laid in the 1951 Refugee Convention. Under this provision, all the states under the human rights law, they are duty-bound not to return the individuals who are escaping danger, not to return them to the land where their lives are endangered. So the Taliban's non-compliance, it actually erodes good faith cooperation on the issues of migration, which actually has left Pakistan in a force majeure-like situation, which binds from uncontrollable inflows of Afghan refugees into Pakistan. The presence of Taliban refugees has been actually straining Pakistan's economy. Around 1 billion annual costs for hosting the refugees has been incurred on Pakistani government. There have been issues of trade halt from closures at the Pak-Afghan borders. Furthermore, there is another issue for Pakistan that we need to understand, that the breaches across the border, they have resulted in straining the regional connectivity dreams, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor in its extensions. They have been breached by terrorists or militants who are operating from Afghanistan, which actually led to a trade dip of 30% post-2021. Furthermore, threats have been posed to the energy projects. They have also been stalled. So under Doha's agreement, the implied notion of pacta sunt servanda, that the Talibans were supposed to carry out the obligations undertaken in Doha agreement, the Taliban has actually shown inaction on these peace talks. And it has been actually a sort of a frustration of the purpose for Pakistan's investments. If we look at it diplomatically, it's a repudiation vibe. The Taliban have tried to hedge their way between Pakistan and India. And if we look at the same problem from a GDP growth perspective, GDP growth has been shaved from 0.5 to 1% yearly from instability. Pakistan has been fearing relisting, which actually lingers on due to terror finance links supposedly alleged by India. So what is the outcome of Doha's peace accord for Pakistan? I think that for Pakistan, breaches of this accord, they have turned a potential peace dividend into Pakistan's nightmare. It has caused clearly from Taliban's half hearted and half measures. And legally, it's fodder for, I think, a United Nations Security Council resolution. But politically, I think Pakistan's pushing bilateral accountability pacts with Kabul raises a question that how is this reshaping South Asia or the regional stability in South Asia for Pakistan? This is something that we need to ponder in the current situation. And with this, I will move on to the next part of my docu-series where I would be talking to the expert and defense analyst who has joined us from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Today, we have Mr. Haris Sejajic with us for sharing his insights and analysis with us on the Doha Peace Accords. Mr. Sejajic would be sharing the European perspective as he comes from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Mr. Sejajic has been a participant at NATO Resolute Support Mission Afghanistan, and he served for 4 years in Bagram, Mazar-e-Sharif, and Kabul. Mr. Sejajic has served as United Nations military observer, instructor for NATO forces, and he holds a degree in war studies. He has a very long experience in security sector reform in peace operations. We are very glad to have you, Mr. Sejajic, here with us today. You're welcome to the show.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, and I would like to greet you all and thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond to on the question and possibility any other question that you may have.
So, Mr. Sejajic, let us begin by asking you the European military perspective. That how has the Taliban government's compliance with the Doha agreements helped in counter-terrorism provisions? Did it affect NATO's strategic posture in South Asia, particularly in preventing Afghanistan from serving as a launchpad for threats against European allies?
The first thing is important to explain that the Europe and the European Union doesn't have one single army. European countries mainly rely on the NATO for security, where the national armed force from European Union work together. But each country still has its own priorities. Because of this, European Union views of the Doha Agreement are not same. They depend on each country's own foreign policy and security interests. We know that the NATO lead international mission in Afghanistan with strong US leadership and support from Europe countries. It's important to note that European Union countries often focused more than on their own national goals and interests, which affected the situation in Afghanistan in many ways. Another important fact about European Union is that they can never reach full consensus of foreign policy issue, and this has strongly influenced us in the situation in Afghanistan, both then and now. After NATO force withdrawal in 2021, the European Union no longer troops in Afghanistan. The facts changed the approach from direct military presence to using diplomacy, working with regional partners and using the intelligence tools to make sure that Afghanistan does not become the base for the global threats again. In reality, NATO never had a long-term permanent strategic position in South Asia like has in the Europe or maybe the Middle East, but through the mission like ISAF and result support had temporary influence in Afghanistan. Based on this NATO focus was mostly Afghanistan, not full South Asian region. The question how the NATO influence might have growth in the USA stated longer remains open. It's worth noting that US administration considered remain control of Bagram air base, which could have allowed the new strategic goals in the region. Regarding Taliban and their obligation under Doha agreements in the field of the counterterrorism, there's action or lack of action directly influence of the NATO strategic thinking. Given the limited transparency and international complexity within Afghanistan. NATO primarily relies on an indirect approach. This includes political dialogue, intelligence sharing, and preventive measures carried out through the regional partners and directly, rather than direct military presence. The overall goal is to maintain regional stability and prevent Afghanistan from becoming a safe haven for groups that's called threat European allies. This approach reflects the need to flexibility and careful in addressing security challenges in highly complex environment. This also links to Europe's wider security, as preventing cross-border terrorist networks is key to stability in Europe and its neighbor. Finally, because the Taliban and partially follow their Doha commitments, NATO and European Union countries remain careful and flexible. Stability in Afghanistan remains important for Europe. Security and the European countries continue to independently, as well as through the NATO, respecting their own national interests and different views how to engage with Taliban. Would be my answer on your question.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. So moving forward, I would ask you that in your assessment as a military officer, to what degree has the Taliban fulfilled the intra-Afghan dialogue, which requires and which has been also outlined in the Doha Agreement, and what are the operational challenges that the European forces have faced or their advisors have faced in supporting stability efforts post-2021?
As a military officer, I can conclude that Taliban have not significantly fulfilled the requirements of the intra-Afghan dialogue as set out in the Doha agreements. If you go on the Doha agreement, the key points, the agreement predicts a credible and inclusive dialogue process, including negotiation between the Taliban and Afghan government, power sharing, and permanent comprehensive ceasefire. In practice, negotiations were often delayed or blocked, and the Taliban maintained the initiative through violence rather than political compromise. The collapse of the previous government and the Taliban took over in September 2021 efficiently made the intra-Afghan process from the agreement unworkable. Internal divisions within the Taliban among Afghan actors, along with the absence of accountability mechanism and inclusive governments, further weakened the chance for the meaningful dialogue. The Taliban participate in dialogue, that is the true, but actually fulfillment of intra-Afghan obligation is minimal or symbolic. When we are talking about operational challenges for European forces and advisors after 2021, I will repeat that the European Union doesn't have a single unified army in Afghanistan. Each country acts its own according to its own interests. They may agree in theory, but in practice, decisions follow the NATO and ultimately the US position. These facts created new operational challenges like limited access of and legitimacy, intelligence gaps, depends of the regional partners, different national interests, and prioritize limited resource and capabilities. From military perspective, the combination of limited fulfillment of the intra-Afghan dialogue and operational challenges for European actors means that stability efforts must focus on indirect and supportive methods, strengthen regional cooperation, intelligence sharing, border security, contingency plan, and selective engagement rather than direct military presence or building post-conflict governments with Afghanistan. As conclusion of the question, I would like to say everyone must to be aware of reality, especially European Union, which sometimes, due to its bureaucratic mechanism and different interests of the members of the state, must recognize that without a credible intra-Afghan resolution mechanism and with the Taliban in power, the rule of the international actors primarily remains monitoring, early warning, and strengthen the capacity of the partners in the region. Europe will never be a major player in Afghanistan, but it could suffer consequences if the intra-Afghan dialogue is not fully implemented.
Officer, how do you evaluate Taliban's adherence to implied security and governance commitments in Doha Agreement, such as maintaining order and human rights, and how has this influenced European military aid or training program for the Afghan forces?
First of all, it's important to emphasize that Afghanistan is still an unstable country in every sense, politically, security-wise, and socially. Institutions are weak, the legal system is not fully implemented, and social and ethnic conflicts make the situation even more complicated. The Taliban formally took control of the country 2021, but their government is selective and very, very strict. With the organization, there are various factions competing for influence and decision-making power, which often leads to contradictory decision and insincerity of the ground. Those internal division make it difficult to maintain order and constantly apply to security and government standards outlined in the Doha Agreement. Currently, after the NATO and the coalition force withdrew in 2021, the European Union stopped any military operational engagement in the country. European Union countries do not provide military equipment or training to Taliban forces, nor do they participate in operations inside Afghanistan. European support is mostly indirect. The focus on civilian security, humanitarian aid, and strengthen the capacity of the local and the regional institutions and partners. The primarily operates at diplomatic and political level to promote regional stability and prevent Afghanistan from once again became a safe haven for terrorist groups. In conclusion, the Taliban partially or selective compliance with the Doha agreements combined with international faction conflicts and unstable state requires the NATO and the European Union countries to act careful and flexibility. The focus remains on regional security and preventive measures rather than directly military engagement, with understanding that the stability in Afghanistan directly affects the border of European security.
So, Mr. Haris Sihajic, one last point that looking ahead, what military implications might arise for European nations if the Taliban continues the partial non-compliance with the Doha Agreement, especially regarding regional alliances, counter-terrorism cooperation, and potential refugee or security crisis? That may impact Europe as well.
If the Taliban continue to partially ignore the Doha Agreement, European countries could face multiple military and security challenges. First, even though that the European Union has no direct military presence in Afghanistan right now, instability in the region can affect the stability of neighbor countries and make the NATO or Europe cooperation with regional partners more difficult. This includes an increased risk of extremist networks spreading, which could threaten Europe allies or international security. Second, the Taliban's Partial non-compliance makes systemic counter-terrorism corporation harder because the lack of transparency on the fragmented Taliban's fraction, limited intelligence sharing and joint operation. Third, prolonged instability could lead the new refugee and humanitarian crisis directly affecting the European Union. That is the huge fear of the European Union citizens. All of this requires European countries and NATO to take adaptable and preventive approach focusing on diplomatic coordination, intelligence cooperation, strengthen the regional capacity. More broadly, maintaining stability in Afghanistan and neighboring region remains crucial for European security and preventing the spread of transnational threats.
Thank you, Mr. Haris Sehajic, for your valuable insights and analysis of the Doha Agreement and its implications and its effectiveness in the post-Taliban era over the last 4 years. I'm really grateful to you for sharing your insights with us. They are valuable, and I'm really grateful on behalf of Pakistan Connect to you for sparing some time and being with us today on the show. Very grateful.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I hope so we continue our cooperation together.
With this, I conclude my special episode of this docu-series on Doha Peace Accord, and I will have some more insights on the same in the coming episode. I'll meet you again. With this, I rest my thoughts here. See you soon again with more insights. Thank you.